Hi everyone, welcome to Inventive Mind. I have another interview today. Just to introduce myself, I'm Gayani Veerasinghe. I'm an intellectual property and business law attorney. That means I do trademark, copyrights, patents, and business agreements, LLCs, corporations, so those things. Um, so if you haven't visited my channel before, there's a lot of resources, and these are interviews with entrepreneurs and small businesses owners that I really like and getting to know. And I figure this is a good way to share resources and let you know who's out there doing these interesting things. And I have today Thomas Bracamontes. Um,
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, and he has a wine import business from South America. That's very interesting. He worked with a lot of different smaller and up and coming wineries, as I know, but he could tell you more about it. And he's going to introduce the name of his business because I didn't want to butcher it. So with that, I'm gonna say hello, Tom. Please introduce your business and yourself.
Thank you, Gayani. My name is Tom Bracamontes. I'm the owner and founder of La Competencia Imports. In Spanish, it means the competition. And it was actually borrowed from my grandfather's little grocery store that he owned back in the city of Orange County, California. He was not the first little store, which in Spanish we call a tiendita. He was the second one into the neighborhood. So it was his way of kind of announcing his arrival. And his feeling was that competition was good for the community. It was going to make both stores work harder to provide a better product at a better price. So I was literally the last, quote unquote, importer into the Mexican or Baja wine segment of the industry. So it was kind of my way of letting people know that, all right, the competition is here. And now we're going to try to do things at a different level and try to see if we can open up the US market for Mexican wines in the US.
That's such a good idea. I mean, I think so one of the events I initially saw you at is you were talking about how why you bringing in these Mexican wines because you have a lot of Mexican restaurants. Like we live in Southern California. I'm in San Diego, so is Tom, and you want to pair those and there's like fine culinary places, and they should have option of these wine, right? Not just the cuisine, but the wine improves that. So I love that story when you were talking about it. I thought that's such a good inspiration and creating a business around it.
Well,
So
it just makes common sense, right? I mean, if you go into a nice Italian restaurant, you expect them to have Italian wines on the wine list. If you go into a French restaurant, you expect the same. If you come to a restaurant in Napa Valley where I live, you expect to see a lot of wines from the Napa Valley. With Mexican wines, okay, we saw Mexican beer. And then in the last couple of years, we've seen Mexican tequilas, Mexican mezcal, very high-end product. But the thing that was missing was a collection of high-end, great quality Mexican wines. And once I did my research and spent time in Baja and realized that they did exist, then all the pieces of the puzzle were there. It just meant somebody had to do it. And that was me.
and I also want to talk about your background because you did work at Napa, some of the wineries before you launched it. It's not like you just launched it without any kind of industry experience. So
The one thing I've learned at my age of 58, you learn that everything in life is literally preparing you for what's next. And my education was in business and finance from Pepperdine University. I was a stockbroker out of college, so I learned how to deal and manage with money. I just didn't find it interesting to talk about money every single day. I always loved music, so I got involved and left the brokerage industry to go into the music industry. And the music industry was about this creative passion, and I can create nothing. I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't make wine, but I know how to take a product, figure out the story behind it, and make it bigger by putting the right elements together. So after spending time in the music industry and understand the creative process and that you still need somebody to do sales and marketing, I fell in love with wine. And I thought, heck, I could do the same thing as it relates to wine. So after spending almost 10 years in Napa working in this industry, I didn't realize, but I was preparing myself to become my own importer. So all those elements kind of came together. And then you have that epiphany. Well, if nobody else is doing it, why not me? And sometimes it's good to be crazy, and it's good to it's good just to dive in and realize, all right, well, I got to swim. I'm in the pool already.
I love that because I think one of the things about entrepreneurship and creating businesses, you do have to go after something you're passionate about. And, you know, if you are at a, like when you're launching something, it's almost like if you look at the big mountain you're about to climb, you're going to be like, oh, I don't think so. But if you just go with it like, oh, this is going to be a fun and let me figure things out, you know, it
Yeah,
works.
you know, I wouldn't necessarily subscribe or recommend to somebody that they should do it the way I did it. I didn't create a business plan, which is probably in some parts is certainly a mistake. But if you have a passion for something, once you get in deep and you realize that there is no going backwards, then you force yourself to be creative and you force yourself to come up with solutions. But everything is based on the fact that you're passionate about something, that you want to do this, and it's not based on money. You know, for me, it was just, why not bring these into the U.S. when you've got all these great Mexican restaurants all over the United States? Whether it's Rick Bayless in Chicago, whether it's Thomas Keller in Napa Valley, you're finding these great chefs now starting to enjoy the experimentation with Mexican cuisine. And you have everything from little taquerias to high-end restaurants, whether it be Las Vegas or New York, but they didn't have a great selection of Mexican wines. And once I figured out who I felt was making the best wines in Baja, it was pretty easy to put together a collection of small boutique wineries. Had nothing to do with volume. It was just make the best product possible.
I think so. With that, how did you go about connecting with these? You said you spent time in Baja, so did you just decide to just go down there and check out the winery? So how was that process was like?
You know, once again, I think I learned something when I worked in the music industry. I worked on what was considered the black or the R&B, or back in the day it was called urban, but I know that terminology has changed. But I worked on the hip hop side of the music business. And I'm obviously not African American, I'm Hispanic. When you're working in an environment that isn't necessarily how you were born and raised, you have to learn something about the culture, the way business is done, and respect the culture, because there's no way you can do business if you don't respect the culture. So even though I'm Hispanic, I was born in the United States, so I'm as American as they come. But I knew that if I spent time in Baja just tasting, listening, learning, that I would begin to figure out why these wineries weren't already in the United States. And once I figured out the 5 basic reasons why they weren't, by that time, after almost a year of going down there, I pretty much knew a lot of people. And I just invited the Baja wine community to show up to a meeting, which I look back now was kind of ballsy, because who am I to call a meeting and have them come to me? But I invited them to come to a meeting to discover why they probably weren't being successful, why other importers were having trouble being successful in the United States. And once I outlined those problems and showed them they were all correctable with little expense, I thought that there was a good chance we would be able to then have success in the US. And lo and behold, that's kind of what's happened.
So how long have you had your business for now?
I officially formed and launched the business in August of 2015. I started importing my first wines, I believe, in March of 2016. But it took a good couple of years of thinking through the process. So even though I didn't have a business plan, you have to do the research. You have to get your license through TTV. I had to talk to people. I had to keep traveling to Baja. So I did a lot of that from 13 to up to 15. So if there was a business plan, the business plan was in my head. It's like, okay, I took 2 years to understand and research. I understand where I can fit. I understand the challenges, but I understand, most importantly, I understand the opportunities. So the business plan was in my head, but I spent a good 2 years just developing the plan, figuring out how I was going to do this, reaching out to distributors that I'd gotten to know through my previous work in Napa, letting them know what I was thinking and planning, and finding out if anybody was in that market already with Mexican wines. And the answer was no.
I think, also said something else about how competition is good
Sure.
because, so I wanted you to kind of talk about that, your philosophy, because we were chatting a little bit before we started recording. So,
One of my, I guess if you want to call it my biggest competition in Baja is from a young lady named Michelle Martin with La Mission Wines. Michelle's probably been doing this for close to 15 years. So she was promoting and trying to import wines 10 years probably ahead of everybody else. And instead of viewing her as my competition, I saw how if we collaborated on certain things together, we could benefit the entire region. So because of my relationship, I helped her get into 3 or 4 big markets. Um, I helped create the first collective sort of Baja experience where we invited people from the US to come down. And I kind of put together the game plan and invited her and her wineries to participate. So yes, she's my competition, but I also knew and recognized, especially 4 years ago, the market needed more mass. We needed more positive people. We needed the wine community to work together. Today, we don't do as much. I mean, we still respect each other. Um, it's friendly competition that if I see that she gets a placement somewhere, I'm trying to figure out how come I'm not there already. But it's more of a friendly competition. And I think the better she does is better for me and vice versa.
yeah,
But
because it's also exposure, right? Like you said, because both of you are bringing this, to the market in US. And other thing I wanted to get to, I remember you talk about is now you're not just in California, but you're in other markets. So I wanted you to kind of talk about that.
Well, based on my internal business plan and my relationships that I developed while working in the Napa wine industry, I could get a hold of a lot of different distributors, either directly or through friends of friends. And because they knew how I worked previously, they they would at least give me the respect of meeting with me, which is always the toughest thing with a distributor. Typically, a distributor wants you to send in samples. Lord knows when they get around to tasting them. You don't know what condition they are, what mood. It's not with any context. So sending samples into distributors is a dead end. But I had enough good relationships that I could get an in-person meeting. So I would fly in with my samples, would be able to explain the stories and the background. And because of that, I've been able to get into 20 plus markets in less than really 4 years of trying. Um, if it wasn't for the COVID situation, I was getting ready to go up to 25, 26 markets. And I still believe by the end of 2021, I will be in probably close to 30 states in the US. So as a one-man operation, to be in more than half of the United States with a new product and a new category of wines that people were like, Mexico wines? What? I've never heard of this. It's not just a tribute to my hard work, but it's a tribute to the quality of the wines that are now being produced in Mexico, the beautiful packaging. And I always tell people the secret weapon of Mexico is the people. When I introduce, whether it be by video conference or in person, these wineries and winemakers that I work with, my job is done. I mean, people just absolutely fall in love with them. And from that point, now it's just servicing the account.
I love that. So as you know, I connected with you because have an interest in working with wineries and also at some point owning a winery. So in the future, but but I think that's the thing. What I love about wineries is that there's a story behind it. There is all these things that goes into it, like it's the earth, it's the creation, is there's the chemistry, all that mixing, and then also there is an art to making wine and presenting wine, because I love like also just looking at the labels and how creative they are, and the bottles and all of that is part of the presentation. So
Yeah, the wine industry is a fantastic industry. I mean, it's for me, it gave me the same excitement when I worked in the music industry that when you hear a record for the first time, a song for the first time, you see an artist perform live. I got that same sort of rush when I taste a new wine by a new winemaker, or you visit a new incredible winery with a beautiful design. I just like the people in the wine industry a lot better than the people that I met in the entertainment business. It's a better quality of life in the wine business. Most meetings are around food, family, and wine. I mean, how can you have a bad meeting if it's food, friends, family, wine, beautiful landscape? But I will tell you, the wine industry is an absolutely brutal business. It is, think of just walking into your typical grocery store or wine store. The hundreds of thousands of labels out there. And wine is one of the most challenging things to market, because with music, you can hear a little bit of it. You've got to open that bottle of wine to taste it, to try it. So that commitment is, there's an obstacle there. Um, but if you can get past that, if you have the right story, the right demographics, the right niche in the market, and I think that's what benefited us. I think that coming on the heels of Mexican beer, mezcal, tequila, incredible Mexican cuisine, it set the table for us. For us, it's just then bringing the best Mexican wines so that they live up to the quality that's expected. But more importantly, not just for good Mexican restaurants, they need to be at any place that has an international wine list.
yeah, I totally get it, because when I go to like a liquor store, and the other challenge is, I think if there's a wine you like, you tend to go for that instead of trying something new, because there are hits and misses. If you're at a like a stove, there's like 30 labels,
Mhm.
and you're trying to figure out, okay, and then if you're trying to, like, you're hosting a party, or if you're just having it for yourself, whatever, you tend to like stay with sometimes your comfort zone. So I think what you said is like getting people to try it, and like if you go out to a restaurant and you try the wine with their food because of the options they have, I think that's a really good ways to kind of get exposure
You
for
know,
that winery.
sometimes businesses overthink things, and sometimes people that are running businesses outsmart themselves. I think if you just watch the consumer is going to tell you what they want. You know, when people were not going to play rap music, oh my God, I'm not going to play rap music. But all the kids in the neighborhoods, black, white, Hispanic, Indian, you name it, they were all listening to rap music. You were going to have to play it regardless. So even though you had some distributors, some retailers, some restaurants, some sommeliers, putting their nose up to Mexican wine, oh my God, Mexican wine. The consumer, if you watched all the articles that were being written and being posted online, or people sharing reviews with their friends on blogs or whatever, everybody was going, oh my God, Baja is so incredible. There's nowhere else like this. It's like being on a scavenger hunt, and at the end, you find an incredible winery. And the food and the tacos and this and that. The consumer has been saying that for years, but the industry was like, Mexican wines, whatever. But the consumer was ahead of the industry. The industry is just now starting to catch up. So as good as we've done over the last 3 years in introducing these brands, we've just scratched the surface. We've just scratched the surface. So in the next 3 to 5 years, the growth for Mexican wines is going to be absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing I wanted to ask you is, because I know you do retreats,
Yes.
and I know we are in COVID-19, this is 2020 when we are taping this, but this video could be, you might be watching, audience might be watching this 5 years from now, they come across this. So I just wanted to put that contest out there. I know you're not hosting it right now, but I wanted to talk about your retreats and how you're bringing people to Baja and, expanding horizons.
Up until now, most of the retreats, or what we refer to as boot camps, they've really been focused on the industry. We felt that it was important to bring wine buyers, retailers, writers, sommeliers to Baja so they could really experience it firsthand. Because you can tell people that Mexico is making wine, but until you actually go down there, people in the trade just didn't get it. So we started doing those quite a bit. And I'm going to hopefully head down to Baja in about 3 weeks if everything is kind of clear. The wineries and I have talked about creating similar um, boot camps or small group visits for 8 to 10 people, where it's both a combination of, yes, food and eating, but also we notice that people that love wine don't mind sitting down in a classroom style for an hour and really tasting wines and challenging themselves. So we're going to do a little bit of educational training, a little bit of walk around tasting, pairing with food and wine. So it's something that we hope to be able to offer maybe as early as August, September, because the market is not going to be normal for another at minimum 6 months and probably most likely 12 months. So we want to do things that are safe, respect social distancing, make sure everybody's protected. But if you're tasting wine, you can't exactly taste through a mask. So we're going to have to make sure that everybody's got enough distance. But we may start doing these boot camps or retreats sometime by September for small groups.
Yeah, I do think, we are looking at about a year of least before, the vaccinations and stuff coming out and the treatments to actually get to normal, or whatever that normal going to look like for next few years. But
I think the other great thing is that Zoom has become a very viable way of doing virtual wine tastings. I mean, there's a number of wine clubs that I've helped organize for either restaurants or small retailers who don't have the logistics to be able to handle, or they don't have the capacity to handle the logistics. So I helped them set it up, and we conducted virtual wine tastings with their wine club members, and we've invited some of the Baja vintners to join us. So who knows, maybe even some of my presentations to distributors or to their accounts is going to have to be virtual for the next 12 to 18 months. I mean, I could see a very proactive distributor taking their iPad into a presentation with a restaurant or sommelier and zooming me in and me tasting the wines literally with them from appointment to appointment. Why not?
no, I actually, that's how we got to, first time I saw you is because you were hosting an event, a wine club with Flash Wine Lounge, which
Yeah.
is in North Park in San Diego. And I love that idea of like the Flash was providing the set of wine. You could pick it up before, and then and the winemakers, winery owners were on the Zoom and explaining the wine as you're tasting it. So I think in a way it kind of gets you a chance to do it while you're stuck at home, or if you cannot travel right now, you still have these options.
And I think that's where, once again, consumers working with small retailers, the small sector of the industry is ahead of the big guys. I've yet to have a distributor say, hey, look, Tom, can you commit to us next Tuesday to be available all day? We are going to take you on a virtual account visit tour. So at 10 o'clock, we're going to be here and we're going to zoom you in, or whatever it is. And then at 11:30, we're going to go to the next guy. So we'll want you to zoom in again. And then, why not? I mean, nothing beats being in person.
Of course.
I put 100,000 miles a year during normal times traveling. But right now, okay, let's think creatively. Just, if you have accounts that are willing to see you, put me on Zoom and I can bounce with you from account to account. And while you're driving from one to the other, I can get some work done and then get in for the next one. So I think we're just all going to have to be creative, and those that adapt will survive, and the ones that don't won't.
I, I, it is the key for business owner to be able to pivot and also see these challenges as also opportunities, right? So I do a lot of business development on Zoom, and I actually have found that I used to have to like drive, find parking. So even if I'm doing a coffee meeting or lunch meeting, I'm spending 2 hours. But now I jump on the call on Zoom and I'm done. And if something happened where we had to reschedule, that's okay too, because I'm next to my computer. So I have work to do all the time. So,
I
it's
It's a matter of balancing that because I don't ever want to become 100% just zooming all day long. I mean, it's
it's
it's nice.
tiring.
It's nice now, but I still enjoy that personal interaction of meeting somebody for a lunch, and in my business, having a glass of wine with lunch, tasting a new vintage together, and just tasting something out of barrel. You can't do that via Zoom. So I think this is a great alternative, but I hope it never replaces an actual in-person visit.
I don't think it will. I think it will be a little more selective now on that you don't have to be meet everybody who want to have a coffee meeting. Maybe you will have a second coffee meeting or whatever, like, somebody you connect with better. You
Yeah,
will have in person instead of, doing these, trying to go to a lot of events and all of that. I do think that's I could see as the going forward, because I too agree there's nothing like in-person meeting and just kind of connecting with somebody and their business, what they're doing. So I think it's a people business, right? It's connections and how you interact. So with that, I will just ask you, like, you already kind of discussed, some advice for what not to do. You said, if you want to share some tips for entrepreneurs and people out there. Um,
yeah. I mean, there's a couple. I mean, I've learned a lot of lessons. I think just like anybody else starting a small business, your access to capital is typically almost nil. You're financing it out of whatever you have in the bank, whether you tap into your IRA account, whether you tap into your credit cards. The biggest challenge that any small business is going to run into is financing. And I think a lot of us do the same thing where you max out your credit cards because the money's there. If I have a $5,000 balance, then I'm going to max it out. The biggest thing you want to do is as soon as your business starts to get a little bit of wind underneath its sail, you've got to pay down your debt. You've got to eliminate your debt because thank goodness I had done that over the past 18 months. That if I'd gotten hit with this COVID situation 18 months ago, it could have been pretty dire. But now I found myself in a great position where I'd eliminated just about all of my debt. Um, Even if you don't need it, apply for a line of credit. Apply for a line of credit when your finances are at its best. When you don't need it, apply for it. Because if you apply for it when you need it, you're not going to get it. It's when you don't need it that the banks will offer you money. So get your line of credits, get your finances in order. But to me, the biggest thing, and it sounds silly, but you've got to do it because you're passionate about something. If you're an entrepreneur and you're doing it just based purely for the money, man, there's days where that it's not going to make sense. There's days when you're going to look at those numbers and go, why am I doing this? But if you're passionate, that's why you do it. And that can get you through a lot of tough times together. So watch your money, make sure that you invest your passion, your spiritual capital, if you will, but also this at the same time, it sounds crazy, but your relationships are going to make and break you. Because I spent so much time in Baja developing relationships with people in the community, these guys are my friends. There have been, in the 5 years I've been in business, at least once a year, there's a company or there's somebody that literally attacks my business. And they have tried to upend my business. They've tried to outflank me. They tried to steal my accounts. They tried to steal my distributors. But because the majority of those people down there are considered friends, I get a heads up when things are going down. There's a certain degree of loyalty that they've been with me and they've seen what I've built. relationships are everything in business.
I absolutely agree. I think, it's good to have loyalty and also what you bring to the table. If you have integrity, people are going to recognize that, because end of the day, it's not, like you said, it's not about the bucks. It's not, it is there a financial component that is big, but it's also important to know, who you're working with. Can you trust them? Is this somebody that you have in your corner or not? Like, you might be able to make maybe 20% more on a different person or service, right? But is it this, I think the personal relationship absolutely runs these, deals, because
Yes. So for me, when it comes to advice, it's like I'm just sharing common sense stuff. My grandfather, when he came to this country, didn't speak good English, and even until he passed away, his English was decent. But he was a good businessman because he had integrity. He treated people fairly. He was honest. He was hardworking. He paid his bills. It's basic stuff. So if you just do the basic stuff, and if you have passion for something and you've done your research, and if you're willing and have the ability to pivot when necessary, those are the biggest things. I mean, it sounds corny, but if you don't evolve, you become extinct. Those are the two choices that people, animals, and businesses have: evolve or you become extinct. So when things are starting to change, don't be afraid to change. Embrace the change and figure a way how you can move your business in a slightly different direction that you may not have anticipated, but that might be the difference between surviving and going bankrupt.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do think those are really good tips. And I wanted to add something to what you said about the business plan. I think not everybody functions the same way. Like you said, you have your business plan in your head. So, like, it's always good to write it down, but I don't think you didn't have a business plan. I think it's more of a work in progress in your head, because some of us, like, I always have a running list of things in my head, and I know I do better if I write it down. But like, I do think people with experience like you, who have done business and been in other places, like this music industry, you have seen the businesses go forward. So you did have, it's not like you didn't have any business plan. It just wasn't a
I think the other
written
thing is that most people are afraid to vocalize their dreams or their ideas for fear that whether it's a colleague or a friend might make fun of them or think it's silly. I vocalize my crazy ideas all the time. And sometimes I I repeat them multiple times because it's almost like you're trying to prove the concept in your head. Is this really doable? You're trying to get your friends to challenge you. Am I willing to stand up for this idea? But most people are afraid to vocalize their ideas or their dreams because people will think they're silly or might make fun of them, or people will try to discourage them. No, I want people to challenge me so I know that my convictions are firm. And if they are, okay, then I start vocalizing the business side of it. I also am not afraid to talk to um, other friends that I respect that might be better at accounting or at finance or that are winemakers, and just have them challenge my ideas or give me a different perspective to make sure I'm not missing something. So I think those are all little things for me that have proven to be successful.
So with that, I will ask you, because I always end my interviews asking people, what do you do for like mindfulness? So to like keep grounded, your anxiety, stress day to day. What kind of, do you have a mindfulness type of practice or something else you do?
Yeah,
That kind of.
there's a couple things. I mean, sometimes looking at a picture of my grandfather and seeing the humble beginnings he came from and how he was able to be successful. And when you're growing up, you don't realize that he's got the biggest house in the neighborhood. He then he then owns the other little house next to it for my great grandmother, and then owns the property where the restaurant is. So thinking about your history sometimes can keep you grounded. Also, for me, about I guess it was 2017, I had a very life-threatening situation that happened with my health. Out of nowhere, traveling on a business trip in North Carolina, in Wilmington, all of a sudden my heart rate got into an irregular rhythm, and they couldn't get it out of that rhythm, regardless of what they gave me medicine-wise or whatever. Long story short, I flatlined, and I had to be, I guess, jump started back to life, and now I have a defibrillator. Okay, so anytime I wonder about stressing out, all I have to do is touch my chest to remind me that 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I could have been gone. So when you realize how short life is, you start to realize that, yes, we have stress, and yes, we want to do a good job, but at the end of the day, you do the best that you can. You've got to be okay with that. You look at yourself in the mirror and hope that you did it with integrity. And at the end of the day, all you can do is give it your best, and then get up the next day and give it a shot. So whether it's thinking about my grandparent, thinking about my younger sister who I lost to breast cancer about 8 years ago, almost losing my own life back in 2017. You know what? There's a lot of reasons to keep me grounded.
That's very inspirational, Tom, and I really want to appreciate your time and thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
I'm going to put your business information below. So do you also have social media accounts? So is it just your website?
You can find me on Facebook. You can find La Competencia Imports on Instagram. I'm terrible at it. I probably need to hire somebody to do it for me because I'm just so bad at it. My generation, it just skipped over me.
Okay, I will put all that information below so you could rate. If you are somebody who is interested in these Tom's business and want to connect and about wine, you will have the information. So
you can also contact me through my website, so lacompetenciaimports.com.
And I'm guessing all the retreats that you're planning, even the small ones, will be up on the website.
We haven't gotten that far yet. What I would suggest that if anybody is interested in maybe one of these small group visits taking place sometime between September and the end of the year, just reach me at my website and just have them. I'll add them to my mailing list. So when we get ready to announce, we can blast it out there. I'm sure we'll put it out through Instagram or whatever once I learn how to do it. But just drop me a line through my website, and that's probably the easiest way.
Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share. And there's other videos on my channel that are about startup strategies. If you're an entrepreneur watching this, check those out. Those are like bite-sized videos. Those are like 10 minutes or less. And until next time, and thank you again, Tom.
It's my pleasure. Thank you as well.